All right. Hello, folks. Thanks for joining us today for another one of our clean water webinars. We're excited to be able to offer these webinars to our monitors, friends, and clean water community as a chance to learn about clean water issues and stay connected. I'm Zach Moss, the Midwest Save Our Streams Coordinator with the Isaac Walton League of America. And just to take care of a few housekeeping items before we get started. First, the webinar is being recorded. So it'll be available on the Isaac Walton League YouTube channel soon, hopefully in the next day or two. You can keep an eye on our website at iwla.org for information on recordings and upcoming webinars in our series. We'll have one next week about stormwater management and how you can manage stormwater sustainably for cleaner water. Secondly, if you guys have a question during the presentation, please feel free to type it in the GoToWebinar chat box or question box. I will be in the background while Ginny and Caroline are presenting, and I can either answer them individually to you, or I can wait till at the end. We'll have a Q&A session, and we can run those by the whole audience publicly. So just as people are presenting, go ahead and type your questions in there, and we can address those as appropriate. And the webinar should run about an hour, including time for question and answer at the end. So today we'll be hearing from our two panelists, Caroline Van Schaik and Ginny Malcolmson. And they're going to tell us a little bit about their experiences, successes, and challenges organizing and leading volunteer water quality monitor teams in their communities. Caroline's in Southeast Minnesota, and Ginny is here in Central Iowa. And we're going to start off with Caroline Van Schaik. Caroline took on the position of Fearless Area Coordinator a year ago at the Isaac Walton League's Upper Mississippi River Initiative and jumped right into coalescing stream teams in Southeast Minnesota. Caroline tells me she doesn't even fish, but she is a farmer with a long-time commitment to the synergy between upland management and healthy water. She's been raising sheep and organizing around water and ag issues for over 20 years, and we'll hear about her efforts of the past 12 months with the SOS program in particular. So I'm going to disappear into the background to moderate questions, and Caroline, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am going to see if I can go right to my slides. It'd be nice if I started from the beginning. Hang on here. We talked about things and then I didn't set things. All right. So, Zach, tell me if, do folks see the slideshow?
So right now we are seeing and hearing you. We can't see your slideshow quite yet. Oh.
All right.
Nope. I accidentally made Ginny the presenter.
Okay, I kind of wondered about that. All right, here we go. We're gonna go to my screen.
There we go. We can see it now.
Okay, here we go. All right, super. So let's go to the slideshow. How does that look? Yes, you guys can see that now, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And Ginny, you can turn your webcam off if you'd like.
All right. So another little technology glitch of all this, you guys, is that I wear bifocals, and bifocals and webinars are a really bad combination. So I'm sorry that I will look like I'm always peering down my nose. It's just trying to see my notes and see you at the same time. All right, let me just jump right into things. So when I started with the Isaac Walton League about a year ago, I inherited what I consider to be this really superb Save Our Streams program. It's a 50-year-old, proven, nationally acclaimed way of engaging citizen scientists in water monitoring in their own regions. And this infrastructure really spoke volumes to me. I felt it allows all of us to address a problem, water quality, to involve lots of people across all kinds of barriers, age groups and urban and rural, and students and scientists and non-scientists, and those who fish and those of us who don't fish. And it's not expensive to participate, and it works on a myriad of levels. For instance, it certainly gets everybody outdoors. It helps people work and protect their beloved fishing streams. If you're a student who wants to be anywhere but in the classroom, you can take your drawing pencils, you can learn how to use a stopwatch and practice with tweezers and get wet. And if you don't like nature, you can play with data. And it allows all of us to look at some of the bigger pictures of our world. There is road salt and agricultural farming practices and lawn fertilizer issues. And there are septic system ordinances, all affected by and impacted by water and impacting water. And then finally, the other thing that makes me so happy to be involved in stream teams, as I call them, is that they are jumping off points for other things. So for example, there's a Isaac Walton group a little west of where I live who've been monitoring the northern reaches of a watershed and taking it quite far with DNA testing to source the E. coli that is contaminating Cedar Creek. And they are now going to partner with a group of people in the southern reaches of the watershed in Iowa. So that's just a great building tool. And another example is that I have some stream team members who are going to be volunteering with me on a public education event that we're going to host next summer, I hope, on a launched boat, setting up education stations around water quality and watershed issues. And these stream team members are going to be a part of that. So it's a really great building block. So I do want to, let's see, do I know how to do this? Before I could tell you anything about what I'm going to tell you later on and today, I had to set out to make something happen. And I had some very specific goals. And to reach these goals, I have some tools that I use, and I have been using them for 20 plus years of organizing around farming issues in this region. And they are these: partners, events, communication, outreach, database, however you want to call it. In this particular case, it means sampling itself. And then finally, the last one is the idea of ongoing support. And I want to address each one of those with varying degrees of detail, depending on how long I'm going. Zach, I had a clock earlier and now I can't see it. So you'll just have to give me a heads up when I have about 5 minutes left, I hope.
Okay, I can do that, no problem.
Okay, great. So before I do go into any of those details, I do have to acknowledge that this is what our stream teamwork looked like last fall. Lots of people hugga-bugga, noses down together, huddled together. And this is what it now looks like in the last 4 or 5 weeks when I sampled. I think yesterday was my 4th group to sample with, and I'll be doing one more that I know of on Friday. And they are in small groups, families often. This is a couple. We're keeping to our own paintbrushes. We're using masks. And we did not even think about doing this until late May and June, as opposed to March and April and earlier in May, when I was racking my brain about whether it was even responsible of me to think about us gathering in any kind of configuration streamside to do spring monitoring. So what I'm trying to illustrate is that it's doable. You do lose some of your participants that you might have worked really hard to get together from last fall, last winter, but it's doable. And you have some people involved at least, and you are collecting data. And all the other folks on my list, I have an Excel spreadsheet, a data list of about 40 people. They're all in the know about all of this. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So I'm trying to encourage you to say social distancing, masks and all, but stream sampling is one of the most wonderful things that we actually can do in a responsible fashion under this COVID-19 situation. So let me jump into some details. I'm going to stay on this slide for a while. I set it together because it can tell us a lot of things. And I'm going to see, yes, all right. So the first thing in my sort of organizing toolbox is the idea of partners. When I started, I made some cold calls and visits to these folks. Winona State, a local university, the National Trout Center, which is nearby. And it turned out that those cold calls very immediately became working meetings because they were partnering in a water quality research program. They'd been teasing the idea of using the Save Our Streams protocol to establish citizen science monitoring in the region, and they just hadn't quite got there yet. So enter me, and off we ran. I am a huge fan of partners. They help validate your work. They bring different strengths to your work. They talk to their constituents differently. The National Trout Center uses social media, and I don't. Winona State ended up, my partnership there brought a stream ecologist to our streams. She's also SOS Save Our Streams certified, so she could do a training for us. And I have a ridiculous attention to detail. So we were really good partners, and off we went. So partners, big one. I mentioned events is so critical. I'm probably event happy more than some people, but I will tell you that we said as a group, the three of us, that we were going to strive to have stream teams on the water before winter set in. So when we backed that up, we realized that we wanted to do the Save Our Streams workshop, a training workshop, which used to be all in person. They will be again. And to do that, we said, well, how will people know about it? We need to build the momentum. And so we decided to have close this down. Nope, that didn't work. Sorry about that. Back here. We decided to have 2 information sessions. So you're hearing events right now. Different days, different times of the day, different locations, to try to bring in as many people as we could to the idea of monitoring streams as a volunteer. So we use social media, good old press releases. This flyer here got posted around. And before we did any of that, we peeled it back even further and said, we're going to do our Save Our Streams workshop, our training workshop in late October. These information centers or information programs are going to build to that workshop, and that workshop is going to build to stream teams before winter sets in southern Minnesota. So everybody came, they signed in, everyone had a cookie. We did a little introduction of all of our partners, some of the grad students that were involved in the Winona State Research Program. We did a show and tell on the toolbox, what the toys look like that we would be getting to play with streamside. We got a little lesson in the geomorphology of our region, and we promoted the Save Our Streams workshop, which is not required to be a member of a stream team. It's a level of training. You get a certificate. I'm proud to say I have mine now. Thank you, Zach, for persevering with me. It's another option for being on the stream and knowing a little bit more about what you're looking at. So we promoted our workshop. Let's see, what else do I want to say? The workshop itself then got advertised again, social media, press release, the whole kit and caboodle, flyers. And then I realized, oh my goodness. So we did do stream teams, as you saw pictures of. But I thought, heavens, from late November until March or April and May for our spring sampling, we gotta see each other before then. So we had a social in February, late February, and everybody brought a little something to nibble. Remember those good old days of potlucks? And we were warm indoors in the house of one of our cohort, and visited about everything under the sun. And then we came together, and one of our Winona State students did a little show and tell on some of the data that we collected last November, and showed some pictures for us to kind of make the sampling real, and the data that the Save Our Streams team gathers in the Clean Water Hub kind of was real too. And we all said, all right, we'll see you in a month or two. Some folks were going to go camping down in the southern part of the country, and there was, late winter stuff. We said, all right, we'll see you in a month or two for spring sampling. Well, of course, that didn't really happen. But some other things happened. The importance of events to build and maintain momentum for what you're doing is so important, and it's really fun. But it does mean that you have to back up from your end goal and 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 come forward to how you want to get there. Good. Okay, what else do I want to tell you? It's also a natural segue to the outreach, which we've kind of addressed. Outreach, communication, a database, talk to your volunteers, put everybody into your Excel spreadsheet or your fancy database, whatever you use to keep a list of who's interested. Even if they never come to any of your events, if they responded to something saying, I'm interested, can you keep me informed, put them into your list. I'm a big fan of press releases, especially for free events. The papers are hungry for local events, and if it's free, they don't have to explain to their ad departments why they're giving away free ad space, as it were. Another way to get your word out, of course, is to go to like-minded organizations. Trout Unlimited is a natural partner for us doing stream monitoring, and they were a great help in getting the word out about our information programs and about our training. Really helpful. Let's see, what's another example? Trout Unlimited. Oh, the state park that hosted us for one of our information programs is a huge proponent of the program, and in fact, we sample one of our permanent sites is right behind their now closed information center. Anyway, they put up a little flyer for us and a little display on their table, which I think is in the next slide. So partners, outreach. The database, I say database, I don't have a fancy database, but I have an Excel spreadsheet, and I email those folks frequently enough that they know that we're still alive. I've told them about all kinds of things. One of our cohorts was going through boxes during the winter and came up with this terrific little book on fly fishing, and he said, maybe it'll be good for the group. Out it went. I send them previews for these wonderful Wednesday webinars that the National Save Our Stream team has been doing for several months now. And I'm constantly talking to them about sites and the possibility of sampling, and it was how we decided to sample in June and not in March and April. To say that these volunteers are integral to the work is almost an insult to them, because they are the work, and the knowledge and experience that they bring to the table is more than invaluable. It is that commitment, and that knowledge is what allows us to even talk about having stream teams in the first place. And any level of participation is good from my point of view. They might have come to an information program and nothing more. They might have even come to the training, and I haven't seen hide nor hair of them. But eventually they will, and they're paying attention. And what did the pundits tell us? We need about 12 times of something coming at us before it suddenly occurs to us like, oh, I don't know, I don't go to do that. So talk to your volunteers constantly and be diligent about that list. So sampling. Zach, how am I doing on time? I forgot to time it.
You're doing just fine. Maybe 5 or 4 minutes.
Perfect. All right. So the fourth thing that I mentioned pertinent for this particular project is sampling itself. So the sampling, as it turns out, is kind of like, when you paint a room and you spend 75% of your time prepping the damn thing, and then you finally get to put your beautiful color on your wall, and it's so wonderful. So getting streamside is the same way. You're going to spend a lot of time doing all this stuff, building your momentum and building the case for why people should come streamside. And then you're going to get people there, and it's so fun and energizing and exciting, and it's the real deal. But getting to those sites, even after your information center programs and everything, it's a whole project by itself. You need to cite sites that are safe, that people want to monitor, that people can get to and park at and find. You have to get your kits assembled. You have to get the kids to the site. You've got to have I'm going to say a grown-up. In our case, you need to have a Save Our Streams certified person. Just one member has to be certified. You got to get somebody who's willing to lead the sampling and collect the data and get the data into the Clean Water Hub, etc. So there's some work to doing it, and it's totally worth it. Then I wanted to spend a moment on the last piece, and that's about ongoing support. So just as the National Save Our Stream folks in Maryland, Zach and company, are constantly updating. I mean, look what they've done. You guys have taken an in-person all-day training and made it fabulously available online. With a little in-person component, we're going to get there. And these webinars. So that kind of support really supports me as I continue to support our group of folks over here. It is going to be immeasurably more likely that your stream teams will sample another season if somebody is in charge. That somebody can be a volunteer, or it can be you, paid or not paid, but they provide continuity and glue and vision and, face it, just some logistical structure to keeping your teams moving forward. So it all pays off. Your kits get better. I have to say that one of the things that came out of sampling in November and having our little social in February was that we realized that in Minnesota, we have to have really good gloves in our kits. And so we have elbow height neoprene lined gloves for our kits, and they're really essential in November, not last week or yesterday, but in November. So I guess I just want to end, let's see, can I do this? With how to reach me. I'm sure Zach that'll come through this listing, and say that whether you use the Save Our Streams protocol or what Ginny is going to be talking about, or anything else, in our case, the Pollution Control Agency has got a kind of a truncated version of citizen monitoring. The concept of bringing people in your community together around water issues in such an enjoyable, soft touch way that can then become a hammer, like the folks using E. coli sampling in Austin, Minnesota. It's everything, and much better for our environment and better for our communities, and people doing things together is a most wondrous thing. Zach, thanks for having me and letting me talk about this. I'm pretty passionate about it, and I'm very happy to talk to anybody further off this show if desired. All right, take me away, Zach. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, thank you, Caroline. I'm going to make Ginny our presenter now.
Okay. All right. Can you see it? Or am I on?
There we go.
There
yeah, I can see and hear you. So thank you, Caroline. So this is Ginny Malcolmson. Ginny Malcolmson is a project coordinator for the Polk County Conservation Water Quality Monitoring Program and administrative specialist. She began her career as a park ranger with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers during the floods of 1993 at Saylorville Lake here in Des Moines, and then as an environmental educator with Polk County Conservation. She graduated from Iowa State University with a Bachelor of Science in Animal Ecology and Secondary Education. And in her spare time, Ginny enjoys traveling, theater, hiking, and spending time with her family, and the best coworker ever, probably especially now that you're stuck at home working, her golden retriever baby. So go ahead and take it away, Ginny.
All right. What I see on my screen is a picture of me. So Can you see a picture of me on my slideshow as well?
Yep, we can still see and hear you, and we see your Polk County water quality slide.
Okay, so you can see the whole thing, because it covers mine up. I just want to make sure that you can actually see the slide, so I'm not covering something up. So this is my first
we're all good.
go to webinars. So thank you for having me and expanding my world from Zoom to now go to webinars. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Polk County Conservation's water quality monitoring program, but also a little bit of context about where Polk County is in case you're not familiar with Polk County. Let's see if my mouse is now not working. Hang on a second. There it goes. So the population of Iowa is a little over 3 million. We're in the middle of the country, and we're primarily an agricultural state. We rank 49th in the amount of public lands that we have, which is not necessarily a statistic that I enjoy, but we are primarily agricultural, so for that reason, most of our land is privately owned. Polk County, however, is urban, mostly anyway. Polk County Conservation has 50,000 acres of public lands that we manage, plus there are some federal lands, some city lands, some state land as well. Our mission at Polk County Conservation is to provide quality outdoor recreation, conservation, education, and long-term protection of Polk County's natural heritage. And with that, of course, if we're encouraging people to go outside and play, we want to make sure that they have the tools and the knowledge to do so safely. So our board in 2014 looked at the strategic plan and looked at the 10, actually 11 because last time, top elements. And as you can see, the blue writing there is the word water, water quality, or watersheds circled. So over half of them were had to do with water. So that was pretty important for us. So out of that came the initiative, our water quality initiative was the #1 goal of that strategic plan. And then, so with that, we decided to build a program. And as anything else that you're building, you have to decide what your purpose is. And of course, what data are you going to gather? And when are you going to gather this data? And what does, of course, the most important question for most people are, what's it going to cost me in money and in staff? Who gathers the data? Is it going to be our staff? Is it going to be volunteers? Is it going to be, who is that person that's out in the field gathering the data? Where do you get the information from? Where are our sites going to be located? And how do we share our findings? So our purpose of our program are threefold, really. Identify areas of concern, which is kind of our red flag network. So we're out there, so we see something happening before it gets flushed downstream. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the findings that we found. We want to increase the public understanding. What does water quality look like? Does clean water mean clear water? Do drinking water standards, do we have to meet those goals in order for recreation to happen in the water? We also want to track changes. So what's it look like now? We need to establish what is normal for that spot, and what does that look like? And how long do we have to monitor in order to find those trends? Is a year long enough? Is 3 years long enough? We decided on 5. So now we have to decide how we're going to collect the data and when it's going to be collected. So we put together a QAP, a Quality Assurance Project Plan, which anybody is creating a program, please reach out. I'm happy to share our QAP with you so that you don't have to create it from scratch. We were lucky enough to have the Iowa DNR Citizen Science Iowa Water Program QAP to start from, and they had a shell for us to start. So that made that project a little bit easier. So, and then we also developed an instruction and training guide, which was specific to our program, but was a lot of the Iowa Water protocols that were already in place. So we did not start from scratch. So that was very nice too. And then of course, as Caroline was talking about, you have to put together the supply kits. And we use Hawk and Chemetrix for the most part for our supplies. And you'll see those as we talk about the processes here. We do a chemical and physical assessment twice a month, the first and third week of the month, so that everyone is going out the same weeks. And we do this all year long, even in January, so we have very hardy field monitors. We record weather, stream characteristics, and do chemical testing. The typical pH, nitrate, and chloride, dissolved oxygen, and phosphate. Once a year, we do a habitat assessment and a biological assessment, and that's usually in mid-July. We know stream characteristics and stream life, as well as identifying and collecting macroinvertebrates, and we use the index of biotic integrity to kind of identify the health of that particular site. We use that information in conjunction with the chemical assessment, the physical assessment, and the habitat assessment to kind of evaluate the health of that area. As I said, budget is always important, not just how much money is it going to cost us, but also time. So we looked at how much the kits cost, and the initial cost is about $400 each, a little more than that. And then there's a refill cost. A kit will get you about 25 sites visits, and then the consumable supplies are about $125 for the next 25 sites. Staffing, the time that our staff participates in the field is about 20 minutes is all. It really doesn't take very long to do the physical, chemical assessments twice a month. The travel time is actually probably takes a little bit more. And then when we do the mid-July one, that takes about an hour. So the time commitment isn't huge, unless you're talking about my administrative time. And then that's a little bit different. We'll talk about why my administrative time is so much higher. We don't have the field managers enter their own data. We'll talk a little bit about why that is, why we chose to do it that way. We'll talk about that later. Our field monitors, when we first started, we decided we were going to start with staff. We had 15 staff members that were participating, and we had approximately 30 sites. And each field monitor did 1 to 4 sites. You'll notice there's an interloper there. Zach is in our picture. This is a picture from our last annual meeting, and Zach was kind enough to attend our annual meeting. So we'll get you out in the field, Zach. After the first year, when we had our 15 staff members, we decided we wanted to expand the program, but we didn't want to try and get more staff involved. We were already kind of maxing out that. So we wanted to partnership with not only public volunteers, which are very dedicated, but we also were able to bring in some other cities. So City of Ankeny, City of Johnston, City of Altoona, City of West Des Moines, and the City of Des Moines, and then Des Moines Park and Rec, all participate in our program now. And with doing that, we were able to double the number of sites. The small line in the bottom was our original 30 sites. Now we have 70. Well, we had 71 at the time of this slide, but now we have 70 sites. One of them was flooded. And because we were able to add all these partnerships and the volunteers, we are actually not much more of a staff time commitment, but we were able to double our number of sites that we were able to monitor. The staff time that went up a little bit is mostly my staff time increased just slightly because of the number of sites that we have taken on. So our field monitors, in order to be a field monitor, you have to go through training. If they were Iowa Water trained before, they can just have a refresher and review the protocols that we have specific to our program. If you want to participate and go out with a trained field monitor, we have lots of volunteers that do that, and then you don't have to go through the training itself. Now that we can't necessarily have our annual or twice a year training like we normally have with COVID, we've developed an independent learning and virtual training and coaching program with an exam that's involved with it as well. So if they want to actually take over their own site, there's an independent learning component now. We have quality assurance, a quality control officer that goes out to each site at least once a year. Visits each site, the same type of program or same type of assessment as the field monitor would, and we compare the results to make sure that things seem correct, that the field monitor is doing the monitoring in the correct location and using the equipment correctly. And then we also have an annual meeting, which we offer some additional training, wards, kind of review what the data looked like for the previous year, and just get a chance to get to know each other a little bit better. When we were picking out our site selection, we had lots and lots of help. We asked staff, the Watershed Management Authority staff, volunteers. We talked to the public works engineers, as well as the city planners. We were also lucky because the GNR had the Iowa Water Citizen Science Program, and we could look at their sites and we could adopt their sites, because obviously if their sites were already in the system, we knew that they had been monitored. There's some data on them, as well as location. We knew that the location was accessible, because that's really critical. You have to be able to have safe parking nearby. They have to be able to actually get into the creek and it's safely. So that they have to look at the normal flow and make sure the normal flow was slow enough that it was safe for them to be in the water, that the depth wasn't too deep, and banks were navigable, etc. And then we also looked at where it was within the watershed, making sure that our sites were spread out enough, they weren't on top of each other, unless there was a reason to do so. So there was lots of things that went into site selection. Our sites are on lots of different watersheds. We have several large ones. Beaver Creek flows from a typically agricultural area, and it flows through most of the county, through the suburbs. And then we have smaller ones that are up in the northeast corner of our county, Bluff and Kearney Creeks, and then some drainage ditches. They are primarily rural, and most of those sites are in areas where they're entering our parklands. The 4 Mile Creek watershed is also another large one that starts in an ag area and ends, flows through the urban part of town. Walnut Creek watershed is also the same kind of thing. This one also, this watershed goes into the Raccoon River, which is a source of our drinking water. So we wanted to make sure we included that one. Yater Creek is a watershed that is completely in the urban area. It starts at the airport and goes through town and ends at our Easter Lake Park. Data submission is a little different for our program because we have such strict protocols as far as when things can be monitored and all of that. We needed to have some kind of, I guess, carrot for why would an agency or a volunteer want to participate when we have strict regulations about, yes, you have to go out this week and you have to go out this week and you have to turn in your data by Monday and all of that. So what was the carrot for it? And a lot of it is my time. I enter all the data that not only make sure that the data is entered timely and accurately, it also relieves that piece of paper sitting on your desk that you're going to get to that you maybe don't get to as timely. I know I didn't when I was participating as a volunteer. So that takes that, completely eliminates that. All I have to do is either mail it in, scan it, fax it, put it on my desk, however is easiest to get the information to me. So it makes it a little bit easier. Some people just take pictures of it while they're out in the field and then they text it to me. So it makes it, that piece go away, so that my responsibility to make sure the data gets uploaded. And we use the EPA's Central Data Exchange for the information, so it's viewable to the public. So this is a slide from our annual meeting, this last annual meeting, because we were talking about data, and I wasn't sure that the field monitors had any idea how much data was involved when they were out there doing their assessments, because they're not entering it. So we had a question for them. So how many data points do you think that we gathered on our 70 sites in 2018 monitoring season? So you don't have to vote. I just throw this up there so you can kind of guess. And if you guess D, that would be an ideal world if all 70 sites were monitored and we had 100% of the data submitted. C was if 69 of the 70 sites, because we had one that is up for adoption that hasn't been monitored. So we're operating on 69 sites right now. And if we'd had 100% submission of data. Unfortunately, that was not the answer. This is actually the answer. B is the answer, because we did have 69 of the 70 sites monitored, and we did have missing data due to frozen creeks, flooded conditions, field monitors unable to monitor for some reason last minute, and the assessments didn't get turned in. A is what would happen if we only monitored once a month, which we kind of talked about doing, because I will admit that there is maybe some field monitor fatigue after 4 years of monitoring and having to do it twice a month in January when it's cold. not always the list on it's not on the high list of our things that we want to do in January when it's -5 out or -10. So we thought, well, let's see what it would look like if we reduce the amount of data. And we have to look at the numbers. We decided that just really wasn't where we wanted to go. We found other ways of making the field monitors, give them prizes. So they get a week off. Someone else will monitor their site. We have buddies that can cover it for them while they're on vacation, and trying to understand the necessity of getting this information in. And I think they all understand, even if you don't necessarily want to come out and monitor in January. So they're committed. They're a good group of people. The data interpretation, once we looked at one parameter, this is transparency for all 70 sites over the 1 year. It's kind of hard to see if there's any emerging trends in that. It looks like a bunch of spaghetti. So we were lucky enough to have a partnership with the UNI STEM program for externs, and she came in and worked for us full time and took that gobbledygook and created automatically generated tables and graphs that look like this, much more easily understood than that last bit of spaghetti there. You can kind of see that week 9, 10, 11, and 12 is actually in the wintertime when things were frozen, so we couldn't get any data. And then the light color is good transparency, so you can see when it's darker, you can see that's probably when we had flooding and soil, lots of soil, or later on when you get towards week 22 and week 23, that's probably algal blooms that are happening. So it kind of gives you a much clearer picture of what's going on with the data. Those graphs that you just saw are part of our annual report that I write every year. It's a long document because we try and give out as much information as necessary. So not everybody wants to read the whole thing, but all of our field monitors actually at least want to read parts of it. You know, they're part of it. So there's some ownership, and this is my area, this is my site. So we did a survey to find out how much interest there was. So the numbers were good. They are really dedicated to this program and getting the information. Seasonal reports are done every season. They're more one page, and I'll show you a picture of what they look like in a little bit. We also update our QAP every year, make sure that our protocols are what we really want them to be, and that we haven't missed anything that, as far as instructions go. So this last 4 years that we've been monitoring, have we fulfilled our goals and objectives? And those are the goals and objectives that we talked about. And we did, or we are. We had an area of concern. This is the Easter Lake outlet. We had a gate valve that was leaking, and we didn't know it because this is a fairly remote area. And if our field monitor hadn't been there to see it and noticed that there was low dissolved oxygen and wanted to discover why, we maybe wouldn't have found the gate leak quite so fast. So we were able to fix that gate valve. And we also had, at the on Walnut Creek, we found some cyanobacteria. And as I said before, the Walnut Creek watershed dumps into the Raccoon River, which is a drinking water source. So knowing that there were cyanobacteria was an important thing to discover. A side note, which this came out from training at our annual meeting, we had an invasive species training. And this is a plant that was also found along Walnut Creek that we maybe wouldn't have discovered otherwise. We were able to report. But all news is not bad news. We also discovered that there was some mussels in one of our creeks we hadn't seen before. That was fun. And then we had an unusual benthic macroinvertebrate. This is a tadpole shrimp, I believe, an unusual find. So that was fun. There's a picture of our seasonal report. And as you can tell, it's automatically generated that it decides what color it needs to be based on the result. So we can look at our seasonal reports and see where the reds are and see if they're reoccurring. Is it happening in seasons like we expect to see salt in the spring when the snow melts? It's happening, but we don't expect to see salt necessarily in the summer and the fall. So why is that happening, and how often is it happening? And is it happening often? So we can start tracking those changes and establishing those trends. Our public understanding is done several different ways. We have kiosks that are static. the field monitor, when they go out and monitor, they move those black pegs under each one of those parameters so they can, so when people are riding by or walking by on their bike trail, they can look and see what the water quality was the last time that the stream was monitored there. We participate in programs and outreach. We have a spring and a fall snapshot, which the Isaac Walton League is partner of. So we get out and we do it all the same day at the same time. We have school programs and civic group outreaches, as well as some volunteer engagement through field monitoring. We also have the snapshot volunteers, and we participate in the middle school and high school silver cord hours. We've had some students from the universities participate in capstones, as well as some of their senior special programming where they write papers and do take our data and analyze it. So that's been a really fun experience. If you are starting a program, want to become involved, this is my contact information, and I'm happy to answer questions, share all of the stuff that I have, do whatever. I'd love to have people join us as well. Okay, Zach, let me turn this off.
All right. Your screen sharing is gone. So Caroline, if you want to come back on, we can do some questions real quick. Folks, if you still have some more questions, go ahead and keep them coming. We've got a little over 10 minutes. We can run through some questions here real quick before we sign off. But
Try to do it fast. I have a lot of slides.
Oh yeah, you nailed it. Thank you. And virtual round of applause, everybody, for Ginny and Caroline, because you might not have been able to tell, but this is their first webinar. So I think you guys did awesome. So thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had somebody just right at the end, Ginny, ask, what is a snapshot volunteer?
Oh, yeah, I didn't talk about that. I'm sorry. Twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall, we have an event where we have everybody meet. We go through some really initial training. These are people who aren't necessarily field monitors, although lots of our field monitors do participate. They're assigned a location and they go out as teams, and they not only do the chemical physical assessments, but they also do a grab sample, which is collecting water from the creek, and the Des Moines Water Works is nice enough, their lab analyzes that data. So we can compare the data that we've taken through the pH strips and things like that with the data that's in the water sample. So it's a nice way to make sure that our data is accurate, as well as giving us a little bit more information like bacteria and things like that. So please come and volunteer for us.
No kidding. And so that's different from your regular every other week monitoring, because you do all of your sites on the same day at the same time, whereas every 2 weeks it can be kind of staggered depending on the individual person.
Yeah, and not all of our sites are on the list. There are actually some ponds and lakes that we don't do as part of our program, but we do a lot of our sites as well. So yeah, and it's all through the county at the same time. So yep.
Cool. This could probably be a question for both of you, so I'll just start with Caroline. Someone asked, how often did you do the biological testing?
Well, actually, using the Save Our Streams protocol, the recommendation is to just do it a couple times a year so that you're not disturbing your stream more often than that. And also for me, just my tenure with the Save Our Streams protocol is such that we've just done it twice. We did it last November on 4 sites, and we are doing it now again on, well, actually, it looks like we might actually have 6 sites sampled. So by the end of next week sometime, we probably will have 6 sites sampled. So then we won't do the biological sampling again until the fall again, October, November, or December maybe.
And Jenny, do you guys do it any differently?
We just do it once a year. In mid-July, unless there's flooding, then August, whenever we can get it in.
I think this one came in during your presentation, Jenny, and you kind of actually touched on it when you answered that first question, but how do you do water quality testing? Do you use kits, or do you send the samples for professional testing? This person says she asks because they've not found a testing kit that gets comparable results to sending the samples off to a lab, which is expensive.
Yes. Because we're establishing trends, we can't afford to do grab samples at all of our 70 sites twice a month. So we do the HOC kits and the chemetrics, so it's pH and nitrate, phosphate, and dissolved oxygen. And then we just use that information twice a month. And then we also do the grab samples the once a year so that we can compare the data. If there's something that looks like it's out of whack, if there's other things like the dissolved oxygen is really low and it's not, and doesn't seem like it should be, we can have further investigation on that site. So that will spur us to do a grab sample then. So we have kind of both things in place.
That is actually a perfect segue into the next question. Somebody asked if there's a trigger level on field surveys where you would make a further investigation if it fell below or above a certain value.
For our program, yes, there's an abnormal results flow chart that they're supposed to follow. If anything seems out of whack, and they usually know what the normal is by now after 3 years or 4 years, but they have a set of cards. So on each test, they'll say, please retest if it's below 6 or if it's above 9, whatever those parameters are for each of the tests. And they'll retest to make sure that they didn't have faulty equipment or make sure that they just didn't misread it. And then they record the results as soon as they have something that matches. If there's additional problems, then the quality control person can go out and also do some testing. And then we also have notify the city or the DNR, whatever is appropriate, if there's something that's outside of those normal parameters that we think needs to have more investigation. The city of Des Moines has in the past looked at some samples to see if the bacteria is present, and they can evaluate whether it's normal bacteria or whether it might be a septic leak or something like that. So there's further investigation that can happen if it's one of those things that's triggered. Yeah, and that's what those red little marks are. When I'm entering data in my Excel spreadsheet, I love Excel, there's conditional formatting. So if there's anything that's outside of the normal parameters, it'll flag it as red. So we can look at it.
Nice.
Can I add something?
Yes,
can I add
please.
something? All right. So I should be clear that I'm not a stream anything, and not really even a scientist. The closest I come is to knowing soils a little bit. It's a great thing to have a partner or two who has the kind of understanding and the scientific background who could answer that question, like how much is too much or how much is too low. And I don't have that expertise, but we have that expertise among our cohort. And the group in Austin, Minnesota, who I mentioned, who's looking more closely at E. coli in their watershed, they most certainly have those people on their volunteer teams. So I don't know who's in the audience or who will be looking later, but if you're a non-scientist person, don't be daunted by that. Just go and find somebody and somebody's agency types or retired scientists, people who do know how to look at the data with a different kind of eye than I know how to look at the data, or take it home and show it to your partner, whoever. But don't be daunted by not being a scientist. And I also wanted to add one more kind of reinforcement to what Ginny said about the lab tests, the sending it away for a so-called proper lab versus doing your various strip tests that you can get from HOC and a couple of other companies. I'm not minimizing the quality of the data, but really we're looking for trends, and also we're striving to involve people in our community in helping us all to look at our water. And if you put the barrier of a water quality lab and the cost that's involved and the rigor of the sampling protocols that are required for those labs between your goal of having ordinary citizens, ordinary people involved in the extraordinary work of monitoring our public waters, then that is a showstopper. And I am not interested in showstopping. I want a can-do attitude. And so if those little bottles of pH strips and the 2 minutes and the 2 drops and the 60 seconds and the 30 seconds in the the sampling that we do, Ginny, you and I both, and the Save Our Streams folks, I think that's fabulous because it accomplishes a world of good above and beyond the actual data points. And then the data points are considered rigorous enough. I mean, the Federal Clean Water Exchange takes the Save Our Streams data, and I hope yours too, Ginny, and says, this is good enough for us to look at and to require all water policy in the country to look at this data. That's pretty darn good. And then you have all these people who are involved in adding eyes to the water. I'm a champion of those little strips. And I can understand those directions. And believe me, if I can, then everybody can. All those little kids in your photographs, that to me is what this is about. The university can do the grab samples and pay the labs to do that kind of data. That's not what we're about. Okay, yeah. End of sermon.
I'll also add from an SOS staff perspective, we haven't gotten a chance to use it this spring because we haven't done any in-person trainings, but we did actually adopt that abnormal flow results chart, Jenny. I think that might have been from Iowa Water. And so we're going to start incorporating that into trainings, and we're also in the works of doing an advocacy guide sort of. So kind of you can gather your data and you put it in the hub and it'll automatically color code it and tell you if it's excellent, good, fair, or poor quality. But then we're trying to provide people with some tips and some directions on what do you do after that, because you know SOS is a national program and it really comes down to local leaders like you folks to make some actual change in your local communities. We can do stuff on a bigger picture scale, but it comes down to our awesome volunteers and leaders to you know generate that action locally. So we're trying to provide some tools to help people do that as well. So hopefully that is coming soon in the next couple months. Let's see. Oh, I had a question actually. So Ginny, could you talk a little bit more, and Caroline chime in too if you have something similar, but can you talk a little bit more about volunteers, like prizes and contests and incentives? I witnessed you giving out some awards at the annual meeting, and like you mentioned being able to miss a week of monitoring, things like that help make it a little bit more fun and engaging.
Yeah, yeah, because it can be a little bit become a chore. We don't want it to become just a chore. We want to remind them how important it is. So, and we appreciate each and every one's efforts. So we always are constantly talking about what are we going to do for them. We have an annual volunteer banquet that they're invited to, although it got canceled this year. But next year, so they get a banquet where they get to meet other volunteers and find and talk about their passions. So that's one thing that our field monitors participate in. We have silly, you know, awards to make it fun. Someone had a lot of graffiti at their site, so we gave them a fun award related to graffiti. But those who were attending the annual meeting got their name in a hat. If they had 100% participation, whether they did it or whether they found somebody to take care of their site, their name got put in the hat. There was another thing. There was a couple other parameters. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but they put their name in the hat, and then we drew out their names for some prizes, but as well as the opportunity to have a floater. We have a floater field monitor that goes and covers when someone's sick or vacation or something happens. They were also awarded 2 months where they could choose to have a week off for whatever reason they wanted, and the floater would come in and take care of their site. So we were able to initiate that program just as an appreciation. So they get that as well. As we're nearing toward our end of our 5-year program, program's not ending, but it is moving forward, but we're going to have a celebration at the end of the 5 years as well. So we'll have some prizes for them, some water related activities that they can participate in. And then also they will get some, you know, more awards like the floater awards. So we want to make sure that they understand that we really do appreciate everything they do.
And Caroline, I know you mentioned you do stuff like potlucks and like little get-togethers and things like that when you have an option too. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, I haven't been doing it for very long, but as you can maybe tell, I am a real fiend for building community, and which is really a way of saying helping people to be together, even right now, and find pleasure in shared work. And I just know from looking at myself that maybe the goal is to monitor a stream, but people do that for lots of reasons, and some of it just has to do with wanting to be around other people. So I try to make that whole process of participating as pleasurable and doable as possible. And I don't, because of the COVID-19, honestly, ordinarily, I think I'd probably propose some kind of a social for this summer as well. But I don't think so at this point. But we will most certainly do something again next winter. And if we're able to monitor in the fall or late in the fall as larger groups, I suspect I will do something to boost the participation of that and make them more than just the stream team monitoring sessions. I just don't know what, because I don't know what I can think about just yet.
Yeah, everything is so unknown at the moment.
It is.
So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to put an exclamation point and say that, as with your groups, Ginny, I'm sure that mostly people come to do this for reasons that have to do with doing good work with other people and feeling like they are contributing to something. And so I work really hard to validate every voice and to make sure that everybody is heard, and to not fail to respond to an email or a text or a phone call inquiry or comment, and to just make sure that people really, really feel, like you said, Jenny, really feel appreciated and important. And that's where the ongoing support is really important. That's what you're doing, Ginny, coordinator, and heck, that's what you do also for those of us back here. And I take that part of my role really, really seriously.
Awesome. Well, we've just passed our 1 hour mark, and we just got one person chimed in, and we'll echo this. They said, "Thanks for putting this together. I appreciate the real world experience and the enthusiasm of Caroline and Ginny." So thank you guys both for sharing your stories and for helping answer some questions and your passion. And thank you everybody in the audience for joining us today. You should get a follow-up email in the next day or two. That'll have some more links, a link to the YouTube video if you want to share that or view this again. And you can contact me. You can email us at sos@iwla.org. And I also put Caroline and Ginny's emails in the chat box if you want to get in touch with them. So with that, we can go ahead and sign off unless either of you two have anything left to add.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Zach, for doing it.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Enjoy the rest of your
Bye,
day.
everyone.